engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
It's Monday. It's Monday. It really is. 7 o'clock. And that can mean only one thing. It's time for Reading the Signs, where me, Comedy John Ryan, and my comedian pals from all over the world are going to be talking about comedy, well-being, why we do it, how we cope. And that's where we need your help. We need you to send us your top tips for well-being. Be part of the show. Drop a comment in the box on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on the mensradiostation.com website. It's going to be a great show, much better than last week. What we're trying to do is think exceptional, which, funnily enough, is the motto of WJ, our show sponsors. WJ are the UK's leading road marking and highway maintenance company. They're working with us, we're working with you. Let's get to it. Good evening. Welcome along to another episode of Reading the Signs with me, at Comedy John Ryan. Every week on here, I get one of my comedy mates to come along. We talk about their experience of the circuit, why they started, how they started, and how they cope. Because very often for comics, they're travelling on their own, they're away from support networks. Financially, it can be difficult, but they have little tips, little tricks for resilience that maybe, just maybe, can help other people too. It's really important during these times when we're all struggling a little bit, let's be honest, that we look out for signs in ourselves, signs in our mates. But what are those signs? Basically, we're looking for changes in feelings, loss of interest, your sleep, energy, mood. You will get signs that you need a break. And it's just a case of looking out for those signs, which is what Reading the Signs is all about. When we're under pressure, we can all react to it in different ways, good or bad. But the thing is, if we get too stressed, stress can lead to anxiety, and anxiety can be a trigger for other things. People nowadays seem to be bombarded with constant messages about mental health and mental well-being, but really what we need to think about is the positive side of mental health, and that is our mental wealth. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to do with this show, is by getting some positive people on here to talk about things. It's not the end of the world if you do experience mental difficulty. Some people confuse sadness with depression. Some people confuse nerves with anxiety. It's when it gets out of hand. That's what we're looking to talk about tonight, and most Monday nights at 7 p.m. here on the show. And while you're listening to the show, why not have a look at the website, mensradiostation.com. There's loads of other great shows on there that will keep you informed and entertained throughout the day and night, and also on our sister site, womensradiostation.com. So tonight it's an absolute pleasure to have Lina on with me. She's very, very entertaining, very engaging, highly intelligent, and a really good mate. So please sit back, have a listen wherever you are, enjoy the show, and let us know what you think. Welcome along to Reading the Signs with me, John Ryan, and we're going to be joined by Lina in a few minutes. It's been a fantastic few days. Especially for football fans, for England. It's great to see that for the nation of England, something positive after what's been a really difficult 18 months. I've had a very interesting 12 months, really, because we've had lockdown and now we're coming out of lockdown, and I've managed to burn myself out by taking real advantage of being able to socialise. So we've been out all the time. If you've been out anywhere, do let us know. Do tell us what you've been up to. We're looking for your top tips for well-being, and we're looking for your ideas or anything at all that can help other people to maintain positive mental well-being. So tonight's guest, Lina, we've been friends for probably about 15 years now, and one of the finest acts, I think, that certainly I've worked with, and finally getting a bit of recognition. So hopefully she's going to tell us about her journey, how she's got to where she's got to. I need to know that you guys are there, so do let us have your comments in the box. Once again, thanks to Veronica for pointing out that there was a bit of a problem with the volume. I'd like to thank WJ, our show sponsors, for getting behind the show and being keen to expand conversations around mental well-being. So a big thanks to them. And thanks to Men's Radio Station. Do check out the website and all the other great shows that they have on Men's Radio Station and Women's Radio Station. They're very keen to promote the concept of positive mental well-being, and we all want to be part of that journey. So, without much further ado, what can I tell you about my guest tonight? Well, as you know, I like to have people that are not just great comedians, but that I also consider to be friends. I've travelled with Rhea, worked with her. We've shared a stage as comedians, and I can't remember if she was Widow Twanky, but we've done our time, we've done our miles. Let's put it that way. She's a great comedian, has an absolutely incredible backstory, which hopefully she will be willing to share with us. For those of you not familiar with her work, she's a great comedian, a great host, a great cabaret act. Is there anything this woman can't do? So, Rhea, when you're ready, please do turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, and come on in.
Hi.
And there she is. It's Rhea.
Hello.
How you doing?
Great.
Do you know what I say? How you doing? I always think I'm like Joey. You know, hey, how you doing? It sounds really cool and sexy when he says it, but I think it's like, all right. It sounds like quite an intimidating question. How are you doing?
It is in the real world. It's a really intimidating question because I always feel instinctively that I need to tell the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't like saying, "Oh, I'm fine" when I'm not fine. Like, it really grates. So then it can become quite an involved question. But in this circumstance, like after that intro, in that moment, I was great.
I should point out, because obviously we're doing this face to face, and there are people watching on social media, but there will be people listening on SoundCloud to the podcast later in the week who will not see the image that I have of someone in what could be an orange boiler suit in front of a white backdrop with an American accent, and it could be like some Al Qaeda. Hey, you know, I didn't know what I was getting involved with.
It could be. I could just be in the middle of filming season 27 of Orange is the New Black. Who knows? Who knows?
I gave up after season 2. I didn't think it would get any better.
I gave up at some point. I don't know what season it was because I was binge watching that. So I just went through, and at some point it stopped and I stopped, and I think it continued, but I was no longer there.
Do you have a current binge watch you're going to recommend?
What am I binging? I just finished The Good Doctor, which I was watching actually out of sort of research as well, because I'm very interested in the portrayal of autism in media right now, because I'm looking to do something similar, but a female portrayal as opposed to a male portrayal. So I wanted to look at that. And now I'm watching Mr. Robot. And actually it actually has similar themes, but that it was actually recommended to me from someone who knows that I'm a bit of an IT geek, and they said, "Oh, you'll like this show."
I'm going to write that down. Did you do all 3 seasons of The Good Doctor?
4. I'm on 4.
Oh, yeah, 4.
Four's out, but they're drip feeding it to us one episode, 1 week at a time. So I'm having I've had to slow right down, but I'm still with it.
That's one of my my treat shows, so I don't binge watch that one. And I do have a habit of rewinding and watching bits again, and just really identifying with some of his behaviors.
Some of those portrayals. So for everyone who doesn't know, The Good Doctor is he's autistic and has savantism, which are 2 slightly different things that we tend to conflate, and we conflate them and think that they are the same thing because of Rain Man. So that was a classic movie with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman, where Tom Cruise's brother Dustin Hoffman had savantism and therefore needed to be in full-time care, and people thought therefore that he was autistic, but it was slightly different things, and so that's caused a lot of trouble over the years in terms of the portrayal of autism that people thought that it was. And The Good Doctor, they've been very clear that he has both. Savantism is that ability to have sort of a calculator or an encyclopedia for a mind. So it's able to absorb a lot of information and then be able to utilize it and spit it out again. And that's what allows him, although he's autistic, to be a doctor, because he's so good because of his ability to retain and then spit information out. And I'm really interested in watching it because I'm fascinated with the media's understanding of what autism is, as someone who was diagnosed as an adult and as a woman, also as a mother of 2 children that also have diagnoses, and just living and working in that world is going, okay, what's being done correctly? Where can my portrayal help the conversation? And I'm also very conscientious of the fact that I will again be portraying a certain high functioning level side to autism, but there are other shows out there that portray a different side to it.
Well, I think because one of our very first conversations was about the fact that I was put on the Aspergic scale, whatever that meant, when I was younger.
Spectrum. Scales are linear.
Well, back, mate, that was the 70s. You with me?
Spectrum's a splat.
Back in the 70s, actually, it was, I can't remember what they, I'll remember the phrase that was used. Maladjusted, I think, was one of them.
Maladjusted?
Maladjusted, yeah. I was considered a maladjusted child.
But to a very narrow square hole.
But that's how it was. I mean? That's how it was. But what it means is, and again, we've talked about this before, is then I would watch something like The Good Doctor and make my partner come and watch this. Now you'll understand why I don't laugh a lot. And for comedians not to laugh is considered a bit odd. But I would watch situations and I will try to deconstruct. So if someone falls over, I can't see how that's funny. If someone's got hurt, how's it funny? And that makes the people around me laugh even more.
Yes. And actually, I find that I think that's where the empathy kicks in first and foremost, is where you sit there and go, oh, I feel that pain. You see someone fall over, you feel the pain rather than that separation of, oh, that's funny. So
it's not, sorry, just to point out, Dave Sleet has just come in with well done. Good point, Dave. And it's nice to hear that you're working on raising awareness, and we'll get more into that whole side of your persona.
And Dave is welcome to message me his own experiences, because I am looking to gather as many true, experiences as possible, because I want to make sure that I am being as authentic as possible. Yeah.
But you see, as soon as you look for that word, my brain went, she wants authentic. And I got a bit excited when you said it. I was like,
fill it in. Speed me up. Honestly, speed me up. I love a bit of speed. I mean, what?
But you know, what one of the many qualities that you have is the fact that you flick, like I do. You flick from a very grave, reverent conversation to just being silly, and that skill, which I believe we have learned rather than maybe is natural, it's something that I see you switch on, switch off, but not. I see it more consciously in you than I do in other performers, but I'm aware that I do it. So, like you, I remember seeing you with your one of your kids, and you were mum mode. Yeah, mum mode, right? So, okay, look, there's your work. You get on with that. I'm going to talk now, and you broke it down and explained it, and he kind of went, "Okay, mum's going to be talking to someone. I'm just going to do this," and then you made a point of explaining to the three of us that, I have to do this process. It's what works for us. And then when you went, one of them went, why did she explain stuff? I went, because that's how she processes that, that you'll go, I'll do that, and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that. And you take that process, it appears to me, on stage, but also just in who you are.
Oh, I can't separate myself from the analysis, just like yourself. Like if I'm in a comedy gig, it's not, and there are people who do make me laugh. And I think I really, really value those people who make me laugh. And you are actually one of them who does make me genuinely, you tickle a part of the brain that the analysis can't reach. And that's a huge skill, I think, is to tickle our brains, because most of the time we're going, oh, why is that joke funny? How did you do that? Oh, I wouldn't have said that. What would I have said instead? What else would work? No, I think that's probably the best example you can use in that. And we just keep going and going and going through everyone's sets. So if someone actually says something where my brain just goes, can't analyze, process alert, and then you laugh, that's golden for me.
And then again, I guess because of my own experiences, I don't like that kind of bullying humor that we see so much of on the circuit, where it's making fun of rather than laugh. I try to be about laughing with. Look, let's all recognize this kind of.
It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I think that a lot of it is status, whether you're a high status or a low status comic, that determines what your comedy is. And I'm actually, I think I play high status, which can then, walk a thin line when it comes to bullying. And especially when I'm talking to people, I want people, when I'm hosting, obviously you want to have fun with them. And to a certain extent, let's admit it is kind of at their expense, but you don't want them to ever feel like they resented coming, or that they're not getting their money's worth the way everyone else is. And you want them to feel welcome ultimately. And that they are, and that we couldn't have had the good time that we had without them, and that they were a special part of that show. So it's a really interesting skills to find that, because, and I am very conscientious of it because I play a high status character on stage, or I adopt a high status persona, rather than what many people do, which is low status. Although hosting a comedy show, I think, tends to go better when the host is high status.
So, just for people just joining us or listening, I'm with Lina. Again, in one of my opinion, one of the best comics on the circuit, and one of the top 3 smartest. I'll put you in the top 3 because I know you won't want to be called the smartest, but top 3, I think.
Now I want to know who the other 2 are.
No, who are these guys? What got you into comedy? How did you start? Why did you start?
Okay, so I feel like there's a generational shift that's happened in the last 10 years with comedy, 10 years ish, and I feel like I'm older generation, and I feel like I was in that generation of people that found comedy because nothing else in life worked for them. They tried jobs, they tried perhaps relationships, they tried different things, and it didn't work. And I certainly found that after everything I've been through in childhood and early adulthood, that whenever I was in comedy land with other comedians, it felt right. And it felt right because none of us were right. We were all misfits and odd socks and all sorts of things, but for whatever reason we'd come together in comedy, and that was our thing. And it's really interesting what comedy is, because what is comedy is one person versus the masses, but one person essentially controlling the masses, or the and maybe you could really analyze it down and go, well, maybe it's the masses that allow that one person to have, because it is true that the audience has the power to take away. They can give it love with laughter and applause and attendance, but they can take it away very, very quickly, in a split second. And I think that that's what brought me to comedy, because I started comedy before YouTube, before Facebook, before social media, where the only way to find it was to truly need it as an answer. You had to go to the comedy clubs. You had to go to the grotty basements. You were still allowed to smoke in the venues. So you're going downstairs, you're risking your health. You're spending all night in these dirty, grotty, sticky floored nightclub rooms and everything else. And trying a craft that everyone keeps saying, you're so brave, this brave craft. To watch comedy, you had to buy VHSs and then DVDs, and then you would watch the same shows on repeat because we didn't have access to streaming or everything that's now available on YouTube. And so I think that to me, that I'm very proud of that in a way. I feel it's really important to say that is part of my origin story, because I feel that now, and I don't mean to take away from the skill of a lot of the newer comics that we're seeing, but I think it's a different proposition. It was not a career. It wasn't a career option when we went into it. It was almost like a last ditch attempt of finding a place in society. Whereas now people can study comedy at university. You can do a course. You can watch everyone's back catalog before you're even old enough to go to the pub and see a live gig.
Well, if you remember when we started out, if someone was filming at a gig, they could get hit. You get thrown out. Whereas now, you want to be social media presence. I was constantly, when I had management, being told, you've got to get social media presence, John. That's where it's all at. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't want to do that. I'm going to be the old time. I'm not selling stuff after shows. I'm not.
Well, John, it's the only reason I said I'd do this is because I knew this. This show was just you and me, right?
This will work. This will work. So it's like a date. We're on a date. How did you decide then for your first gig? How did that work? What made you pick up the phone and go, I'm doing it?
No, so my first gig was actually at university. Unusually. For that, my first gig was at university. I went to St. Andrews for my undergrad, and the Dead Parrot Society, which was the comedy society, decided that and they would host different type. They would host plays, and then they'd have some improv. They had all these different types of comedy. But we in St. Andrews are off the beaten path in Scotland. So even in Scotland, we're off the beaten path because there's no train station there. And we were often skipped by touring shows. They would go from Edinburgh to Dundee to Aberdeen and just completely skip us. So we had to kind of make our own entertainment. So they decided we'd do a stand-up night. And they went around and asked everybody, and I was sort of involved in drama and acting and things. And they said, Rhea, will you do it? And I said, are any other women doing it? And they said, no. And I said, I'll do it. And that seemed to be the biggest thing for me, was whether I would be up against other women, because I knew even then before I knew that I was autistic, I knew that if there was a neurotypical woman that had, you know, a level of popularity, if she had decided to do it, that it would, there would be nothing left in the room. There would be no box for me to tick or no area of the audience that I could go, okay, I'm going to do this. As the only woman, I was able to get up and represent women. And therefore I knew that I'd have at least half the room on my side. And that was my first gig. And it went well. You know, it went well enough for me to go, oh, I might give that another go. And then the next year they went, hey, remember that thing we did last year? Why don't we do that again? Because things were annual in those days.
Yeah.
And we did it again. It didn't go as well. And I think that's true for most people, that second.
So there's a year between your first and second gigs?
Because that's all there was at St. Andrews. That's all we did. A year.
You need time to write a set as well, don't you? So.
Well, I did have to write a completely new set of material because.
A new 7 minutes, was it? Or was it?
Well, 5 to 10-ish. You know, we were doing our own thing. We didn't know anything about structure. We all just went up one after the other, like a review, and just did our bits. And then the second one didn't go as well, which I think is true for most people, that the second one, there's something about first time jitters and beginner's luck and all of that.
Yeah.
And it didn't go as well, but it was enough that when I moved down to London to do my PhD, that I was like, oh, I've got this thing I do stand up. And so I decided to sort of jump in because I could take with me this false sense of security that I already knew that what I was doing.
But I think that's when we met, was
very early on. Yeah,
very early on. And it was a strange experience for me when I started doing stand-up, because I would go and do a gig, then go home, and then I'd go to work. I didn't have that. I remember one night, one of the guys saying, hey, we're going to go back to mine, have a few beers, smoke some weed, play some FIFA. And I just looked in disbelief and incredulity, like, why would I do that? Well, that's what kids do. These guys are in their 30s.
Do you know, I mean, it's funny. Students and comedians are very closely related species. And I still, even now where I don't need it, get this little spark of, ooh, when they go free food. I go, ooh, free food. Yeah. And it's just built into us to go, ooh, free. And it's food that you go, I don't want to eat that anymore. I don't want to put that in my body. It's, you know, maybe it's pub grub or whatever it is that, you know, well, not nice. There's nice pub grub. I don't want to upset people, but it can be something that you don't want to eat, but you still get excited by it because we've spent so many years from hand to mouth, and just that the gig money doesn't quite cover travel or you know, or you end up with 3 pounds left. So yeah, we're very similar creatures.
So again, just for people just tuning in on SoundCloud or looking at watching us on YouTube, this is Real Lina. We've agreed top 3 definitely most intelligent comics in the country, and also one of the finest comics. One of the things I wanted to ask you about though is why do you think there's not so many women in comedy, or why traditionally weren't there? What do you think that's about?
Well, let's start with that. Why traditionally weren't there? It's a testosterone environment. It's set up to be in favor of testosterone sort of driven people. And I don't mean that like scientifically as in you must have testosterone, but that's the nature of it. So what are clubs? Clubs were any space that wasn't being used at the time where they could throw together a microphone and an amp, you know, like I said already, you know, the sticky floors and everything, those are not feminine environments. And then stand up itself, it is very testosterone with, you know, we talk about in the industry, we talk about things like punchlines per minute. How many punchlines can you get into 60 seconds? You know, 4 is kind of like a nice average. That's 1 every 15 seconds, which is quite a high rate. And that's not how women write and produce humor. Women are quite subtle in a lot of it. And if you watch, you know, female-led shows, if you look at Smack the Pony, or if you look at Miranda, or if you look at mind blank. What's the one with Phoebe? Fleabag. If you look at this humor, it isn't punch, 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 hit you. It's actually quite nice and subtle, and there's laughs, and there's a different range of emotions that are being used. So I think that fundamentally it was a much narrower group of women that would go into these environments and thrive, as opposed to go, this isn't really for me. Now that has changed over time. And certainly also the audience acceptance of women has changed over time. When I first started, I had to excuse and explain that, yes, I am a woman, but I am good at this. And that might take 3 to 5 minutes at the top of one set. And sometimes that's all you had. But now if I go on stage as a woman, there's a cheer. People are going, yeah, finally representation. And there's been a real flip flip in the zeitgeist, which means that also creates a much more welcoming environment for newer comics to come in and feel comfortable honing and training their craft. I think there's some other more nefarious reasons why there aren't more women, at this level in the industry, which is unfortunate, but I hope that we're working on that now.
But I remember very early on, because, when I host a show, I will try to make the room right for the next act. I will never go, here's your next act, she is good, or she does this. And so many times afterwards, I've had women comics come up going, do you know how important it is that you do that? I'm like, well, I didn't actually consciously think of it. It just doesn't, to me, you take the mic out, you're a comic. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. But then when I watched other hosts, traditionally what would happen would be they would do their dirty, filthy sex routines and then bring on a girl. And you go, what are you doing? We're meant to be elevating the show to make us all look better. And that kind of adversarial nature of it, that was something I really struggled with at first, because I remember once putting a compere in a headlock because he went, oh, they were brilliant, weren't they? Here's your next bloke. He might be crap, might be good. I don't know. And then looked at a bit of paper with John Ryan. And then as he walked off, I grabbed him, span him round, walked him back, took the mic out, said, I think this guy needs to learn how to introduce people. Do you want to say something? He went, you get off me or I'll call the police. And the audience laughed. I went, go on, off you go. And then I'd lost the room. But I never worked that venue again. But I really wanted to hurt him, because I thought, because of the way I was brought up, if you were adversarial, you had to be able to deal with the consequences of it. And the modern sort of comparison to that is, I struggle with social media. I got trolled by a guy who said I was rubbish and you crap and all the rest of it. So I said, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. But, thanks for sharing your opinion. He goes, yeah, how can you earn a living doing comedy? You're not even funny. So I did a bit of research, and then I did a message saying, I noticed that you live in Liverpool. I'm in Liverpool next week. Why don't you come along to my gig and we can talk? And I meant come along to the gig and we'll talk. But he took it as, I know where you live. I'll see you after my gig. And wrote back to me saying, if you threaten me again, I'm going to call the police. And I genuinely did. My daughter was in hysterics because she thought, this is, how can you not see what you've done, Dad? I'm like, well, what? I was inviting him to have a conversation. No, that's not how it works. You're meant to.
Yeah, I think it was the picture of your fists that threw him. You know what I mean? Like, I know you meant to talk, but I think this going, maybe. Come talk. You just took the picture. Yeah.
So, okay, so we kind of see that it has always been harder for women. What about for women of colour? Because how does that is that even harder? Or is there a?
I see it. I think it is, but I didn't see it at the time. I didn't see a lot of things. I think that diagnosis really opened my eyes to a lot of things that I just didn't see, because before I was just sort of lurching from not crisis to crisis, but lurching from life event to life event, just kind of reeling the whole time. And I don't actually have a lot of memories of my early days. People will say, oh, yeah, I saw you at that gig here. And I'll be like, did you? But yes, it was harder for women, but to a certain extent, I will say that there was a meritocracy in comedy. And certainly before television came in and exploded and social media came in and there was so much more television and radio opportunities than there were. When it used to just be, we can only see you live, when producers could only see you live, then the meritocracy was a little bit more. So if you were funny, if you did do well. So actually early on in my career, I think by 3 years in, I'd been on every television channel. And that was because producers would come to the circ and go, oh, who have we got? Oh, there's only one woman. Look, she's doing well. Let's take her. And so I actually had quite a lot of early success because that's the only way they could see people. Harder for women. Yeah. Yes, I think it was, but I didn't see it. I didn't see who I wasn't getting booked for. I didn't see that I was getting booked in the middle when maybe I should have been closing, although I think that's a bit much to say that early on in my career, but still, I didn't see that. But women of color, I did start to see that. I did start to see when they started opening up and when they were like, oh, we're actually going to actively look for women, or we'd like to actually, I did see certain opportunities going to people who I felt weren't as prepared for them because they were newer, but they were certainly of a distinctive look. And that tended to be a very sort of white blonde. I don't want to be too prescriptive with this, but it certainly wasn't, what race are you? It certainly wasn't that. Or what then happened, the next evolution of that was, we need to understand what your backstory is before you open your mouth if we're going to pick you. And and that's where I really struggled, is when people said, we want people of color. And I'd go, hi, hello, person of color experiences. And they'd go, but we actually are only interested in certain stories. And we want you to bring the stories that we think we want to hear. Instead of bring us your story, it's, but are your parents first generation? Because we really want someone with first generation parents, because that's really funny as a sitcom.
So it's only when you agreed to come and do this, I thought, well, I'll do what I do every week, and I'll try and do a bit of research. I always thought you were Dutch. I don't know where I got that from.
My parents are Dutch.
Oh, that'd be a bit.
I grew up in the Netherlands. So
there you go.
There you go. Say.
I knew that. I knew I'd heard it, picked it up somewhere, and thought, I think she's Dutch. And I thought, I've got to do a little international show. But actually, turns out I don't. So again, I am talking to real Lina, top 3 smartest comics on the circuit, one of the funniest, and finally getting the recognition I think that you deserve. I remember seeing you on Mock the Week and sent you a message going, oh wow, it's brilliant, because for so many years we would talk, and I would kind of watch your growing frustration at what more do I have to do to get noticed, whereas obviously my thing was always to not get noticed, so I don't care. You know, when we do a gig and then one of the acts would get picked to go on a telly, I'd say, well done, mate, because it wasn't what I wanted to do. So and I could never understand other people's frustration, because at a very early age I realized I was never going to play for Celtic and I was never going to run in the Olympics. So my expectation skills are just 100% nailed on. If someone tells me you can't write a book, I'd be upset, because I'm going to write a book. But if someone says you're never going to read the news, it doesn't get me down. So how do you feel now that you're finally, all your hard work seems to be pushing you in the right way?
I mean, on a personal level, it feels really rewarding to finally sort of break through that. It was a glass ceiling. There was a glass ceiling, my own glass ceiling, not for everyone, but I was pushing up against it, and it's really rewarding to break through, and actually on a professional level be confronted with new challenges that because there comes a point where live gigging is incredible. It's an incredible rush, and and it's addictive in a lot of ways, and there's a huge craft to stand up, and I am nowhere near the end of that journey at all. I have so much more to learn about writing and creating, and what do I want to say and how do I want to say it, and all of that's still there to be done. But I have done 15 years of that journey, and it's really nice to be able to do new and different things and to go, ooh, am I good at this? Mock the Week is actually one of the hardest shows, and everything that I've done in the last 6 months, it's still one of the hardest shows that I've done, and it was the first one that I did, in terms of the writing expectations, performance expectations, and keeping up with everybody else that's on the show, because everybody at that level, their brains are going like this, a mile a minute. I'm used to having the fastest brain in the room. No. At Mock the Week, it's 7 fast brains, and you're all competing with each other, and that's a rush in a different way. I mean, it's terrifying. It's its own roller coaster. But it was really nice to finally be able to do those things. So yeah, I guess that's. Do
you find is it welcoming? Is it like being a new act again, first time you appear on a show like that with?
Yes, there definitely is a circuit. I always sort of saw comedy in the arts like a staircase, and you're a borrower. I think that, to me, that's the analogy, is that you're a borrower and you stand on the stair, you stand at the bottom of the steps and you look up and you go, oh, I can see to that step. And you think that's all there is. And then you finally clamber up and you stand up there going, I'm at the top. And then you look up and there's another 3 steps, because you can only see, as a borrower, so many steps ahead of you. And you keep thinking you're seeing the top of the staircase and you're not. And so every time you go up, you go, oh, look how many more levels there are to climb. And I think that is how I felt going up, because I'll be honest, there are times where I've been cast in a show and I'm sitting there and I am the most experienced comedian in the room. I've been going longer. I've done more shows. I've gigged more widely than everybody else. However, other people in the room have more TV experience than I do, and they've done more shows, and and they've written for, and I have to accept that. I have to accept, okay, I have a certain skill set, and a lot of those skills are transferable to this, but they have experience that I don't have. And therefore they've built a very specific skill set that I have to admit outweighs mine.
But
in that field.
That kind of meritocracy to it, though. Do you not now see, though, that now you finally, your star is rising? Let's be honest. I think it's probably 2 years ago today, actually, not on the Monday, but that we did our Panto Academy thing, and I remember talking to you kind of at length about you thinking, well, I've got to get a break here. I've got to find something, and me not trying to sound wise, but just being Mr. kind of good Dr. Rain Man, going, it will come. Just believe and it will come. But not trying to sound philosophical, but just because that's what I believed. And
I really value that. I really value other people's belief, because part of being autistic for me is I can't judge anything. I genuinely cannot judge a performance unless I have feedback to tell me what that was like. But I have no ability to go, so when other people say, I think you are good at this, I need that, because I don't have any. I think that a childhood of growing up with autism and therefore being told over and over again not to trust your own input. And it's hard as well, because it's not just not trusting your own senses, but it's also when the messages you get from other people are so mixed. When one of the things I struggle with is neurotypical saying one thing but meaning another. So I always need to go to someone else and go, did they mean well done, or was that just what you say because you say that anyway? Like, is that real or is that not? And it's one of the reasons why I value constructive criticism so much, because I feel safe with constructive criticism. It's never 100% good. It's never all good. So if someone comes up and goes, hey, that was great, but, I'll be like, great, give me the but. What is the but? But you didn't like a joke, but did I look down too much? What did I do? How can I make that better? What can I be aware of? And I think that that's the same, so when you said that, it's like, it means so much more than people realize to have someone else go, no, I'm on the outside. I have no vested interest in anything.
You've just got it.
And this is
and when you watch performers, I tell you, when I saw your growing up to that platform, when we went to Glasgow, and we did a weekend in Glasgow, and you wore, and there is a relevance to this, but you wore like a kind of mini skirt and a top, and I looked at a short top, and it was
for stage,
yeah. And
wow,
I've not seen you dress
me.
like that going on stage before, right?
Yeah.
But I looked at the guys in the audience who were laughing and really enjoying the performance, but more importantly, the women were too, right? And one of the things about it was the fact that before that, I'd always noticed that you dressed kind of neutrally, almost deliberately neutrally, but I'd also seen that a lot of other female acts had done it. And after, I think the next day, I was explaining it to Tasha, who said, yeah, you there's no point looking attractive on stage, because a lot of women will go, oh, she's the tart, what are you looking at? And a lot of the lads will just switch off the humour bit and just become geezers, right? But you'd managed to get an identity whereby you can wear what you want, because you got it. No one is going to say anything to you. And one guy did make a comment. You just smashed it down. The room gave you a round of applause, and we're watching someone. Yeah, it's all there. You've found whatever that thing is, your voice or whatever.
I think it's for all women to find, but it's to find how to use your, okay, we cannot deny that women's sexuality is a part of the media, and it's you can't ignore that. And how you decide to use that is purely up to you as the artist. And someone will choose to ignore that, and someone will play it up, and someone will play it down. And, and it took me, I was actually quite protected by my own physicality. And I think that I was very lucky in that way, because I was such a small, petite, very young looking Asian when I first started, when you first met me. It meant that the women didn't feel threatened. And I think that that gave me a huge advantage, is that the women didn't feel threatened that their husbands would be drooling at me on stage. So they would sit back and relax and enjoy what I was saying. And the men, there was never a problem with men. I've never had any men want to laugh, and they want to give you a chance to make them laugh. I don't think when men are sitting in comedy clubs, they're going, "I hope the next one's hot." That's actually not it. But when they're with their wives, it's the wife, and not now. Relationship dynamics have changed so much in audiences. So. But when we first started, the women would be like, "What are you looking at? Why are you looking at her? Stop smiling. What are you doing?" There was a lot of that, and it was the women that would go, "You can't laugh at this," or, "You know what? I'm not threatened by her. I find her funny. You can laugh at her too." And and there's a lot of advantages for me in that, in just being so pixie-like, without certain accoutrements that women didn't feel threatened. And therefore I was able to make a lot of personal progress as an artist because of that, to the point that when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to own the way that I look, I had enough words and enough other skills
and
that I was
confidence
able to go,
and wherewithal stagecraft. When I started, I had a crew cut. I used to wear jeans and a t-shirt, and I remember once doing a routine about immigration, and pretty soon thinking, no, you're laughing at this for the wrong reasons. And it was something about fox hunting, and the hunters wanted to have a hunt. The saboteurs didn't want anything getting caught. So let's put the Metropolitan Police in charge of it. And then that way there'll be a hunt, but nothing will get caught, except for 2 black lads in Stoke Newington. And I remember guys laughing, but not because actually the joke there is that the police, they were laughing about the idea of 2 black lads in Stoke Newington getting arrested. And at the end of the show, make the point of going up to them going, "Yeah, look, that's not what I meant." And then it's because of how I looked. And so I'm aware, people don't realize that the whole psychology behind going out on stage and thinking, if I swear too soon, if I'm too aggressive, and every little nuance of you has been observed. Plus what we have now that we never had when we started was that everybody is Britain's Got Talent judge. Everybody will come up to you after the show and go, "I like that bit. I didn't like that bit. Have you thought about doing that bit?" Or,
I have a joke for you. I have a joke for you. And I'll be like, "That's not how this works."
Oh, mate. And then again, about 9 gigs in, the bloke come up to me and goes, "I've got a joke for you, mate. Right, there's these 2 Pakistanis." And I was like, "Whoa, just stop right there, man. Let's just not go no further with it."
Yeah, let's pack that back into the 1968 Playboy magazine. You got that.
No, but me being me, thinking I can clever my way out of this. I said, "Were you sure there were Pakistanis, not Bangladeshis? Because, for a while there, they were the same country, and it's very easy to confuse the two." He went, "What?" He goes, No, these 2 Pakistanis. I went, "It's just that Bangladeshis tend to be fishermen, and the Pakistanis tend to harvest jute, which is like a cotton fabric used in manufacturing of clothing." He went, "Do you want to hear this joke?" I went, "No, not really, mate." But
I like that joke. I like that joke.
Yeah, but now I could do that on stage. I'd have the confidence to do that on stage. And obviously elaborate it. But at the time, I was just genuinely perplexed as to why he didn't want to have it explained to him, and then go away and think about, does it matter that they're 2 Pakistanis? What is the gist of the joke?
But so many people are not interested in that. I mean, even now, there was a study that came out today that said wokeism is partisaning. Is that a word? Is splitting politics.
Yeah.
Is the fact that we've got intolerance and intolerance to the intolerance.
Yeah.
There's not enough tolerance going on in the middle. And I think it's the same thing. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't want to hear. I'm being fed too much of that. I'm not interested anymore." And I think that's the problem, is that there's too many conversations or too many ways of going, "Look, you've been thinking wrong, and let me tell you why." And everyone's tired of that. I think, gosh, I'm really widening this out, but I think it's also why we've been discussing nothing but should we wear masks after July 19th over and over and over again, because everyone's fixated on this, and people feel very strongly one way or the other, and there's no middle ground, which means that those that feel that we shouldn't wear masks will continue to wear masks and be sensible and be conscientious about it. And those that don't want to wear masks won't, but they're also...
So once again, let me just point out to anyone listening now on SoundCloud or watching later in the week, this is Lina, one of the top two, I'm moving you up now, one of the two smartest comics.
Ooh, I moved up a level.
Yeah,
so
I moved you up one because I just realised that you're smarter than me. So I pushed you up one.
Oh, so you're third now.
No, I'm not. But
Hi,
obviously,
Andy.
one of the finest comics as well. Andy Ray just saying hello. Thank you, Andy. Good to hear from you. Great comedy magician. And who's lost loads of weight. So I'm not talking to him. He's left the chubby club.
No,
but anyway,
it's in the hat. Isn't it in the hat?
He's done. He's magicked. It's magician's diet. That's what he's found. So
yeah, but well done, Andy. Well done.
You have mentioned before. Just how do you cope then? How in terms of your own well-being, how would you cope with this? So, like, you're a mum, you've been diagnosed with autism, you are traveling, you're away from home, you've got the financial insecurity of comedy, you've also got the fact that you have, that you've got this, you're female, you're Asian, trying to get into a marriage. How on earth have you stayed on it and together?
Well, I've always been female and Asian, to just clarify, always. Yeah, so that's not really been still time, Well, you never know. You never know. I was toying with being straight, white, and male because that used to be my in card, but not so much these days.
It's not easy. I'm not
easy anymore. No, they're not the.
So how do you cope? What's your coping strategy? Being away from home, or
for me, it's all about managing energy over the whole. Yes, there's compartmentalization. Of course, you have to compartmentalize. You have to leave being a parent at home if you're going to go out and be a comedian and a grown up, because we work in a grown up industry, which is very much an 18+ job. And I think it's overall about, it's a very holistic approach, which is, I take everything in its stride. So, okay, I need to do a governor's meeting or a teacher's meeting or do a gig or do a meeting or just even the mundane stuff. I need to renew life insurance, all of those things you do. And then for me, at some point, if there is a gap, there will be days where I should plan these and I don't plan them as well as one should. Like, I'm not good at routine. I'm not good at going, right, every Sunday I will take it off no matter what. But when there is periodically, just naturally with the flow of things, a gap in the clouds, a day after 6 or 10 days where there's nothing there. And that's when I see there's nothing there. And I wake up that day, I'll be like, right, this is my nothing day. And that is the recoup day. That's the day where you're on the sofa. That's the day where you're in your pajamas. That's the day where you might get takeout and just properly go, I am switching off. And the day I switch off the most is my birthday. I will always switch off on my birthday.
When's your birthday? When is it?
It is in the year.
Oh, you just talked yourself out of a big present now, and that's it.
No, we did just miss it in the spring, I'm afraid. I know. I'm sorry. I'll
save it for next year.
I just missed yours as well. I'm so sorry.
Oh, mate. I'm just still getting over that one.
You had one? I know that you don't always get one because it's the month.
Because of the birthday month. It's interesting you say about managing your energy. I've today watched a film. I just spent the afternoon, watched a film, had a nap. And then I switch off, so I don't look at emails at weekends. And for the third Saturday in a row, a company that owe me money have emailed me on a Saturday asking me to log on to their finance system, but the link goes after 24 hours. So this morning, as always, I've emailed them and rung them up and said, look, I don't do emailing on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm not going to do it. So you need to email it right now. And they're like, well, but we do it on a Friday. It's the system set up. So the emails go out overnight, Friday night, Saturday morning. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Nobody works that day. Yeah, that makes no sense. No, I think that I've learned to check my phone less. I'm quite sure my phone will say otherwise uh, on the weekends, but certainly I've learned to feel less obligated. I used to feel this huge sense of obligation. I must write back. What if I don't write back? Because whenever I sent out a text or something, if I didn't hear back, then the paranoia of, oh my gosh, they don't like me. I've done something wrong. They hate me. Why aren't they answering me back? They haven't seen it. Have they seen it? What's going on? And I slowly learned to, it's theory of mind, but slowly learned, okay, hang on, what might they be doing that they're not answering me straight away? Because I would tend to answer things straight away as it came in, partly because I didn't want them to have to wait and wonder what I was doing and give them an answer, and partly because I didn't want it hanging over my head, because eventually I would forget. If I don't do something straight away, whoop, it's gone. Yeah. And so I have learned to reduce that a bit on the weekends. I'm trying conscientiously to make sure that my phone does not come out if I'm with the children, because they've complained about that. But also on the flip side, this contraption, this mobile phone, which didn't exist, I did not have something like this when I was, pre-diagnosis. Basically, I've only had a smartphone in the last sort of 5-6 years or so. Whenever that became a thing, but this has actually been helpful. I find this super helpful in terms of coping, because it makes it much easier to withdraw into a world of your own when you need to. And I can do it anywhere. If I'm on the train and it's loud, especially right now, the trains are screeching. For some reason, they haven't been oiled. And that, I'm very sensitive to noise, but it means that I can, put headphones in and do something else, and I'm not really there, and withdraw. And actually huge, and I know it's awful. They're like, get off your mobile phone, you won't be able to sleep. But actually watching a movie on here, pass me right out at nighttime, switches that brain off. I'll have to pick up the episode the next morning because I don't know where, I fell asleep in it. But this, and, games, simple games where you can just go in there and just go, right, I just need to play I just need to do something repetitive. Hugely. I know it can also be a source of stress, because if your work is coming in on your phone and people are texting all the time and everything else, but I'm learning to manage that myself. I'm learning to manage and to judge when a notification needs to be addressed and when it needs to be left. And
then how do you maintain like the family part and the social life and the friendships?
Social is the smallest part, but that's always been the case. I've never had a lot of friends. I've never had large social groups. I've never really been capable of being in large social groups. Now, don't get me wrong. When the comedians have their Christmas party organized by the wonderful Susan Murray every year, I love that party. I absolutely love to go and see everybody they work with, because in fact, I've been in comedy pretty much my entire adult career. They are my friends, or I will derive enough social enjoyment from that evening to last me for a year. It has to last a year, doesn't it? But I think I have developed friendships that last long spans of no communication. And they, because I think I have a few very close friends that are in their own way as busy and as focused on their things as I am, so that we all understand instinctively that we're not calling, there's none of that. Why haven't you called me? Why haven't you called me? I need you to call me. None of my friendships are like that. All of my friendships are, oh my gosh, it is so great when we see each other. Oh, we should do this more often. And then another, 6 months elapses before we,
but also we can,
a few times a year.
We pick up where we've left off. So Andy raised a classic example. We've not seen him for 2 years, but if I saw him tomorrow, we'd have a beer and have a chat and go on great. And,
why are you singing without me? We all met at the same time.
Never going to happen.
Right. Let's reunion.
He wants me to give him the pep talk I gave you that led to your rocket through the ranks up into
oh, well, it wasn't, I think it wasn't so much the pep talk as the unicorn powder.
Brilliant. Have you got anything coming up that people can come and see you in or see you at?
Well, if you want to do serious chat, I just did the Jeremy Vine show today, so you can catch that on, all five, my five. Yeah. Catch up on that today. I am doing, yes, actually, if you're in London, I'm doing a showcase on the 13th at Up the Creek. So that's going to be star-studded lineup. That's going to be amazing. And then this Saturday, I'm also in London. I'm sorry, I'm not traveling more. I'm in London doing the Covent Garden Comedy Club. And Thursday, if you are around at around lunchtime, I'll be up in Glasgow doing a Breaking the News recording. So I don't know how you get tickets for that, but that'll be out literally the next day. So you could hear that on BBC Scotland Radio.
That is, we've got a message here from Marvin, who's a mate of mine who lives in Spain. But when I posted that you were going to be the guest, he actually made a point of saying how much he enjoyed seeing you in Leeds a while back. So it's funny how
Those are good gigs.
Yeah, you forget how much influence you have on people and how much you're affecting people's lives with just what you're doing, not just with your comedy, but also raising awareness of the autism and really showing that for British Asian girls. Look, the future is there. The future is bright. One of the great things I think about this whole Black Lives Matter and the whole kind of dynamics of the last 12 months is that we now watch the football, and there are female commentators, and there are female panelists, and there are female presenters, and I work a lot in construction. And once they started having females working in construction, it changed the whole nature, the macho culture. The lads now won't lift heavy stuff because they can see there are other ways of doing it. Same with comedy, pioneers like yourself, and the same with the television. So I can't thank you enough for giving us some of your time. Hopefully
Pleasure.
I'll speak to you in the week. And just all the best, and just keep doing what you do, mate. Thanks for being a guest.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me and doing this.
You take care, yeah?
You too.
Speak soon. All the best.
Bye.
That was real Lina. Just amazing. Just a really, truly inspirational comedian and performer. Like I say, the comedy circuit has got so many interesting characters who are not just very funny people, but they're people who, they got lives. You know, they go home to their kids, or sometimes they'll go back to their bedsit or whatever. Ria had some great tips there, I think, for wellness and for well-being, and something that we can all kind of take on board. One of them, of course, was about managing your energy. And it's really important, I guess, that we think, you got a car, you don't drive your car 24/7, 100 miles an hour, do you? You just wouldn't do that. But you run your body 24/7, 100 miles an hour. And at some stage, it will catch up with you. One of the things about health, physical health and mental health, is that you're storing up trouble. You're just storing it up, because once you hit a certain age or a certain event or a certain time, it's payback, and it will catch up with you. As always, I'm talking about people who are, what did she call it? Neuronormal or neurotypical. But I'm talking about people who just, you haven't got problems. Maybe the problems in your life is that you need a bit more money, or you're not happy with your job or your kids, or niggly little problems. These things build up, and when they build up, they can get out of control and can cause you real difficulties. It's very easy for an issue to become a problem. It's very easy for a habit to become a lifestyle. So it's important that we think about ways of protecting ourselves. A lot of people will go to the gym, but where's the gym for your mind? Where are you doing stuff for you? So she talked about managing your energy. Like I said, today I watched some Ricky Gervais film, Ghost Town or something, and I watched it for a simple reason, in that I don't particularly like the man's comedy or how he comes across. But I thought, it was a good film. And it was nice to just sit there, do nothing, just while away some time watching a bit of television. She said about having a nothing day and just switch off. And that's really what I tried to do today, was to just switch off and to just do nothing. I know that we've had 18 months with not a lot of work, or not as much work, but I had a mad weekend of just partying and being out really late, and it really did catch up with me. Tomorrow I'll get back on it, but in terms of working and the rest of it, rather than, can you get back on a few beers? But what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do to protect your well-being, not just for tomorrow, but for the rest of the week, and how that's then going to affect the rest of your life? Have a think about it. What do you do? Why do you do it? And why do we do what we do? What are we trying to prove here? What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to say? Check your phone less. Now, I've just checked my phone because I'm making sure that I stop this clock at the right time. But check your phone. How much are you looking at it? How much are you doing with it? Last week we had Danny on. Danny's tips, still good. Make other people happy. Was it Albert Einstein who said helping others helps ourselves? But then who's helping you? Making other people's good. Kane Brown, of course, still top tips. Be selfish. Look after yourself. Get yourself down to the gym if that's your particular thing. Get yourself, first and foremost, mentally in a good place, because you got to be right to help others in the way that Danny is suggesting. As always, I will recommend that if anyone does have any problems, do have a look at the timetochange.org.uk website. Mine are good as well. If you're worried about yourself or any of your friends or family, or you just want to find out a little bit more about mental well-being and mental health, because it's everywhere now, and everyone's talking about, oh, mental health, mental health. Nobody knows what it is. It's just about how you think and how you feel, how you behave, and your state of being. Do go and get help if you are worried about yourself, or if you're worried about any of your family or any of your friends. If you do struggle, don't struggle on your own. If you know someone's in trouble, just go and say, are you all right? What can I do to help you get through this time? Because like the weather, we have good times and bad times. We have positive mental health. We have negative mental health. Big thanks as ever to WJ, our show sponsors, and to Men's Radio Station for giving us this platform where we can all talk and discuss things openly. I'll see you next week. You take care.
Well, that's the end of another episode of Reading the Signs with me, Comedy John Ryan. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. talking with comedians about mental wellness, mental well-being, and just trying to get the conversation going. What we're trying to do is show that it's good to talk, and we're also trying to show that everybody can go through the same experiences. A massive thank you to the WJ Group who sponsored the show, showing their commitment not just to mental well-being, but also to reaching as broad an audience as possible. It's great to be part of the mensradiostation.com family, so do check us out on the website, on social media. We'll be back next Monday. You take care. Stay safe, everybody.